We are back. Revinyl once again. Craig, we're going all the way back to the 80s today.
It's a good place to go.
I love the 80s. I think
I think it's that.
I think it gets a lot of flack from people
Yep.
that just don't know the stuff because there was a lot of bad stuff. I mean, the One Night in Bangkok and some of those songs that are just, but every decade has those.
Yeah, we keep picking on that poor fella.
Yeah, poor Barry.
Yeah, believe me, I mean, I think a lot of the radio hits at this point were so overplayed and everything was synthesized. I mean, it was the era of the synthesizer, right? Things changed.
Yeah.
And so it run amok? Yeah, it did. Just like a lot of other genres did the same thing, right? New wave kind of went in an over the top format, and I think MTV kind of had something to do with it running amok. Had something to
Absolutely.
do with hair metal. Sorry, Kevin. Hard rock and metal ran amok, and I think MTV, the image, tainted a lot of that too. But man, some of my favorite albums and some of the most inventive music, just in general, came out of the '80s, in my opinion.
100% agree with everything you just said. And I was just thinking while you were talking that the 80s were the 80s was the first decade where we were over inundated with music
Yeah,
without being able to select it. Because nowadays
right.
people would go, "Well, if I don't like the song, I just go to one of the 200 other Sirius stations or I leave that particular YouTube channel or that song or whatever." Back then, it was whatever was on MTV, that was what was on, and whatever was on the radio, you couldn't do anything about it. There was usually 1 or 2 stations per major market that were worth anything,
Exactly.
and you were kinda stuck with what you had or you listened to your own collection, but even then, we didn't have streaming services and such, but the '70s did not have MTV, so we were truly over inundated in the '80s, especially, and I'm not gonna pick on that song again, I'm gonna try the Safety Dance. I
Mhm.
got to the point where I was like, "Okay, I can't watch that video again."
Yeah, right.
But it was massive.
Yeah,
But but you would keep it on because you wanted because the next song it might have been Simple Minds or something that you were waiting for 3 hours to see, so you would keep it on, you just maybe tune it out or walk out of the room, but
there's
I
something
love the
about
'80s.
that level of anticipation to me that
Oh,
is
yeah.
what albeit frustrating at times. Because if you really go back into the '80s, I mean, we were literally recording what was on the radio on a cassette
Yeah.
deck. And
Yep.
so when that song hit, like, you would rush to hit record so that you had it on your cassette, because singles were released a lot of times pretty far in advance. So it's not like you
Yeah.
could just go buy the album. So if Echo and the Bunnymen released something, or whomever it may be, I would be diving to tape that, and we would share those tapes. We would do that's the whole
Yeah.
mixtape thing, was an actual mixtape, and in all aspects, it was probably, some of us got savvy and would record from cassette to cassette. Yeah, we got
Yeah.
we got to the point where, but it really was a different age and time, and I do remember staying up, you know, just as late as I could to just hear something new.
Yeah.
And I would listen to a lot of those songs that I got kinda tired of, but it's like you said, you're on the edge of your seat waiting for that next track because it might be that one song you're looking for.
Well, I remember, for instance, Rush. The first time I heard Rush was probably Tom Sawyer, and I saw it was the
Oh,
MTV video. It was a live recording,
yep.
and I was just obsessed with it. But yeah, I was 12 years old or whatever. I couldn't just rush out to even to the record store to buy it.
Right.
Maybe wasn't even feasible at the time. Certainly couldn't stream it. So I had my tape recorder set up not in front of my radio, but in front of my TV for the next time they played it on MTV, and I ran to it, record, and then I'd stop it at the end. I'd wait for maybe a week later some other song, and I built a tape around
Yep.
that. All the songs that I wanted. There were
Mm.
other times where I would leave the room because maybe I was going out to play or go to dinner, and I would just hit record, and I'd record an entire hour of whatever station I listened to, hoping that that one song that I loved was going to pop up in that hour just so I could go back and listen to it. I mean, kids nowadays wouldn't understand that concept at all.
No,
It,
not at all. Yeah,
no,
it's
and there
just
was something
completely
about
different.
the hunt.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, it made us, for one, with a lot more patience. Um,
Yeah.
and it to me, it was more rewarding because when you found
Yes.
something, you're just like, "Oh, now I can go seek something out." And this is a different conversation altogether because 'cause I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of stuff built off of Spotify lately. There's a lot they're in the news, and it's not for good reasons. So definitely something we'll talk offline, and maybe that's something we'll carry over to the podcast because it's completely
Yeah.
different. It's just a completely different approach to how you put yourself out there, just a completely different approach to how you gain popularity. Um, but yeah, I harken back to this era a lot. I think a lot of what happened in the 80s built, for me, one of my favorite decades is the 90s, but a lot of that was pre-built, and what influenced the 90s bands were the 80s bands that I love so much. So the 80s were a big
Absolutely.
influence, right?
I'll tell this story really fast, and then we're going to jump into our topic, which is going to be so much fun. I'm so excited. I texted you earlier and said, "Hey, I've got this idea," and you said, "Because just so everyone knows, it's almost 8 o'clock our time right now, 8 p.m." But I was so excited, and Craig felt the excitement. I was like, "Okay, dude, let's do it. Let's start recording."
Yeah.
But last story I'll say, I was driving in my car, and this was 94, 93, 94, and there was this song that came on, Mr. Jones, and I had no idea who it was. I didn't know Counting Crows because they were a brand new band, and it was driving me nuts. I would hear it on the radio, but you'd have to wait sometimes, and sometimes they wouldn't even tell you after they play 4 songs, and maybe they would
Yep.
wrap up and say, "Hey, we played so and so," and you'd have to deduce and go, "Okay, I know that wasn't Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd, had to be this Counting Crows." And when I finally found the name of the band, I thought it was Country Crows. So then I went to the record store. I was like, "Hey, do you guys have the new album by the Country Crows?" And they looked at me like I had 4 heads, you know? And so I had to go back, and finally I figured it out. It was Counting Crows. So that's how hard it was back in the day sometimes to
You've
find.
heard my story. I think I told it here about Stone Temple Pilots. I mean, think about it. That makes, at least Counting Crows makes some level of sense, but Stone
Yeah.
Temple Pilots, and
Yeah.
mine was, I was like, I'd heard the name once and I was so into the song Sex Type Thing. I just thought it
Yeah.
rocked. I have to get this
Yeah.
band. They remind me of a poppier Alice in Chains. And so I go and, I looked for the Temple Test Pilots. I don't know where I came up. And so the guys at Turtles
That's
were
yeah.
just like, we can't find Temple Test Pilots. So I sat there for a good 2 weeks until I was like, oh, Stone Temple Pilots. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you go back and go, "Okay, I got it now.
Yeah.
Help me out." Um, all right. So what we're going to do here, I've talked about this before. You and I have. I have this pretty embarrassingly huge catalog, not just of albums that are all the way down the wall and
Yeah.
to the floor and the ceiling, but I also have collected magazines and books through the years. And this one magazine was my favorite back in the day. This was 1989. I used to get Rolling Stone magazine, and I'm not knocking on Rolling Stone, but it's not the same Rolling Stone anymore.
No.
Rolling Stone
No.
40 years ago, all they talked about was rock and roll. They would always have maybe one cultural, maybe something that was going on in society, or it'd be some really interesting story about a war or something somewhere in the world. But they wrote so many great articles on music, and it was mostly just rock and roll. And it wasn't even always predicated on popularity. Sometimes they were so far ahead of the curve. You would not really see that anymore now. And
No.
they did tons of record reviews and stuff. So they did this release in November of 1989 of the top 100 albums of the 80s. And I was telling you before we jumped on that this was my guide because I was a teenager at the time, and I would use this as my guide to figure out all the albums that I hadn't heard of. There's a lot of stuff in here that in 1989 would seem crazy now, but I hadn't heard of or heard at least that album before. And so this is what built a lot of my record collection back in the day. So I
Very
thought it'd be fascinating to go. We'll break it up into parts over time. Today we'll do 100 through 81. So we'll do the first 20 of that list and just see what they even had. And like I told you offline, it's going to be interesting because I bet this wouldn't be the same top 100 list of the 80s if they did it again today. There's
Yeah,
stuff that's on
with a
here that they
little
would kick
revision
out.
Yeah, with a little revisionist history, which it could be a
Exactly.
good thing or a bad thing. We'll see. We'll see what
Yeah.
pops up, but I'll be interested because at this point, it's still fresh, right? So
Yeah.
really, really cool that you
That's
still
what
have that.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's so fascinating about this is to me, it's more interesting to know what they thought at the time than it would be now because now everybody could just jump on the popular what's cool to put in the top 100.
Right.
This was before they had an opportunity to realize if it was cool or not. They were just saying, here are my favorite 100, here are our favorite 100 albums. So here's
Mm,
the magazine. It's really big. It's like, I don't know, 300 pages, but I'm just going to start and we'll roll through these pretty fast,
cool.
but we'll stop along the way for the stuff that we really love. So, number 100, so bringing up the very end of the top 100 Rolling Stone albums of the 80s is the Sun City Artists United Against Apartheid soundtrack that was released in 1987.
Okay.
And it was produced by Little Steven, which we love,
Yeah.
along with Arthur Baker, which I do know that name.
Yeah.
It peaked at number 31 in the US.
Okay.
And I remember the one song, Sun City. I thought it was an awesome song. That video was really it. I didn't know much about apartheid at that point in my life as a young
No, of
kid, and that
course.
video was one of those first ones that opened up our eyes to social. There were things going on in the world we had no idea
Yeah.
were happening.
Little Steven's still spreading the good gospel as we speak, too, man. He's got a
Oh,
great channel on XM Sirius. Love that dude. Yeah, it's a great song. That's cool.
love Little Stevie. All right, number 99 is the band. This has been a long time. Was Not Was. What up,
Yeah.
dog?
Yep.
And
Don
it was
was.
produced, yeah, Don and David was along with some guy, Steve Salas. It was released in September of '88. The album peaked at number 43.
Yep.
I haven't listened to it in a long time, but that had I Am a Spy in the House of Love. I
Yeah.
loved that song back in the
Yeah.
day.
Underrated album.
Yeah,
You don't hear them mentioned. You hear Don Was's name thrown out every once in a while, but you don't hear them. That's cool.
right. Yeah, and I think Walk the Dinosaur was the name of that other song that was
Yeah.
kind of the
Everybody
went
get
off
on
of
the
that.
floor.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Love
Okay,
it.
number 98, band that we just talked about on the last podcast, UB40, Labor of Love,
Mhm.
which was produced by UB40 and Ray Pablo Falconer. It was
Mhm.
released in September of '83. Wow, I didn't realize it was that far back. And it peaked at number 39. I
Think
love
about
UB40.
Yeah, think about this. What an eclectic mix so far just with the first 3.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Very cool.
just you wait. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. 97. We love this guy so much. And this had the song Start a Fire on it, which I was obsessed
Mhm.
with when it came out. Graham
Yep.
Parker, the Mona Lisa's sister,
Yeah.
which was released in May of '88. And it
Cool.
was produced by Graham Parker and Brinsley Schwarz.
Explorers. Nice.
Yeah. And it peaked
Love
at
Graham.
number oh, yeah, me too. Number 77, it peaked at. What a great I love Grandpa. Up until this point, I kinda lost touch with him after this album,
Right.
but pretty much everything he did up until this point, I really like.
Well, you know, if this is in there, there are several more Graham Parker albums to come.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. 96. This would be one where I wonder if this would make their top 100 today. Maybe it would because it was loaded with hits.
Right.
But number 96 is Culture Club, Color by Numbers. It was released in October of '83, peaked
Yeah.
at number 2 on the charts.
Oh,
Huge album.
yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if that peaked at number 1. Yeah, I totally get it. I feel like he's kind of Boy George and just that whole sound has kind of fallen out of favor. It's seen as a little bit more kitschy now, but if you really go back and listen to it, it's just good, catchy tunes, man.
Yeah.
Good songwriting is
Yeah.
good songwriting. So
Absolutely.
it'll come back at
And
some point, and that will be in favor.
yeah, and I mean, look, they were on a roll at the time. They were so controversial at the time with Boy George
Yep.
and his appearance and everything. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, early 1980s, you didn't see a lot of that. You saw the extravagance of maybe an Alice Cooper or Kiss. There weren't many artists like that were almost a different looking person, on
Right.
video and stage as Boy George was at the time. And they made it work, man. They were massive at one point.
Yep.
You couldn't go anywhere without hearing about them. Okay, number 95. absolute shocker that this is only 95. I feel like, and if this was done again, it should be much further up. I love this album. I've listened to this album 1,000 times. 95 is Scarecrow, John Cougar Mellencamp.
Oh, yeah. I'm
What a
surprised
great,
that wow. That's his big
yeah,
album. I would think that would be top 50, but yeah. Okay.
yeah. It was produced by John and Don Gaiman, who also did some REM records back in the day.
Yep, he did Life
Fables,
Shirts
I
Pageant.
think.
Like, he did Life Shirts Pageant.
Yes, Life Search Pageant. Yeah, Fables was Joe Boyd. Okay, and this peaked at number 2. I love Rain on the Scarecrow. I love just about every song on that
Rain on the
Scarecrow record.
Scarecrow is probably my favorite. That might be my favorite Mellencamp song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vicious. I mean,
Yeah.
he viciously attacked at the time, because that album was his. That was his first record. He became a big pop star,
Yep.
and then he went back to his roots, and he looked back at things that were going on in Indiana with the farmers and how they were being treated. And
Yep.
he a lot of the songs on that record addressed that, and it was somewhat political,
Yep.
but he was so good.
Is Get a Leg Up
Okay.
on that? Do you know if Get a
No,
Leg Up?
that's on Whenever We Wanted To. I
Oh,
love that album too.
I do too. I love that song too. Yep. All right.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite. That may be my favorite Mellencamp record, actually. Scarecrow and Whenever We Wanted To are my two favorites. 94, there's no chance that this is 94 if they did this today. This would be top 25, I have to think, is Power, Corruption, and Lies, New Order.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
They have
way back at 94.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised that it's Yeah, I don't know how to think about that because I just don't know how they were seen at the time because I wasn't paying attention to that music at that time. I didn't really pay attention to New Order until the 90s.
Okay.
But New Order now is probably as popular as they've been since they were at their pinnacle. Like people are
Yeah.
starting to finally see their influence.
I knew where you were going with that, but I have to say, I grew up in a small town, and in 1987, I was a huge New Order fan because of
Hmm.
Substance, which we've talked about before.
Yep.
So they were big enough then to have warranted probably. I'm shocked that it's only, but interestingly enough, and no surprise, it did not chart in the U.S. upon
Yeah.
its release in 1983, which isn't a surprise because when that album came out, no one in the U.S. knew about New Order at that point,
Yeah.
except maybe people who went to clubs. Okay. 93. This is one that I won't have any comments about other than he's got an amazing voice. And I know him because he sang backup for David Bowie at one point. And that is Luther Vandross, The Night I Fell in Love. Peaked at number 19. It was released in 87.
Mm-hmm.
I've never listened to that album. I don't have any.
I haven't
knowledge.
listened to that album, but I think we need to recognize his brilliance vocally. Seriously, one of the smoothest vocalists ever. I mean, it's almost like his mouth didn't even move. He had such a buttery tone. It was so, and the struggles that he had to go through because he was seen as a sex symbol at that point, but he was not in. He wasn't interested.
No. Yeah, huge talent. I just, he's not somebody I go back and listen to, but it is cool that he was what he's saying, backing vocals on the on Young Americans, David Bowie.
Yep.
Which makes him really cool.
I'm actually probably more fond of that sound now than I was when it was released, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very laid back and enjoyable.
Yep.
All right. 92 is going to be a shock. And I'm telling you, this is another one that would be way up the list now. 92, Full Moon Fever, Tom Petty. Can you believe that?
My God.
In today's world, that would be number 25 or something.
Yeah, easily. Easily. Oh, man, that's how I feel about Tom Petty. That album's brilliant. Everything he did. Yeah.
It peaked at number 3. I would have guessed that went number 1, but it peaked at number 3. It was released in April of 89, produced by, of course, Tom Petty and Mike Campbell, along with the legendary Jeff Lynne from ELO.
Yeah. I think Free Falling Alone, I think, would have put that album at number 1. That song alone.
Dream.
Yep. Oh, Running Down a Dream too. Yep.
Such a great album. It's got lasting power because we still love it today. I'd still listen to it right now.
Yep.
I'd pull it out. Okay, 91 is self-titled, Lyle Lovett's first album. Did not chart. way back in the day. It was released in April of '86, so that's number
Good for
91.
them. That's an excellent album. Excellent. Very I don't know if underrated. Nope, overlooked. I keep using you.
Yeah.
You can be both, or you can be either. Overlooked. I don't think people truly understand how talented Lyle Lovett was. Is.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Okay, number 90, Huge Star. This album, I'm surprised this only peaked at number 9 from October of '87. Nothing Like the Sun by Sting.
Yeah. Yep.
That had If You Love Somebody, I think was on there. We Will Be Together, or We'll Be
Yeah.
Together Tonight. Is there a way everyone knows? That's a good album. I haven't listened to that in a long time, but I like that album. I
That
think it had Legal Alien on it, or Legal Alien in New York, or some
yeah.
song like that.
He's another one that I was such a big Police fan that I kind of rebelled against his solo albums, but I really, really enjoy his solo albums now.
I do too.
I really enjoy him now. I'm a big fan of him in general now.
Yeah. Well, we'll follow that up with '89. This was towards the end of her commercial peak for sure, but Aretha Franklin, Who's Zooming Who?
Yeah.
And it peaked at number 13. This came out in 1983. I mean, what can you say? Her albums from the '60s are some of my favorite soul records, without a doubt. I love her so much.
Classics. I'm not a big fan of Who's Zooming Who, honestly. I think it's a cheesy
No.
song, and I respect the lineage, the talent. I haven't listened to that album, so I can't base it off one song, right?
Right.
But I heard that recently, and I thought, if this was not Aretha, I don't know how this would have ever been on the radio.
It would have never made it. I
Hot
agree
take.
completely. Yeah, hot take. All right, '88. And I love this artist, but I'll be honest, I don't know that I've ever listened to this album. Number 88 is Jackson Browne, Lives in the Balance from 1986. It peaked at 23. This was when Jackson Browne was starting to decline in his popularity. Those early albums, Running on Empty, Late for the Sky, absolutely amazing.
Right.
Lawyers in Love even, but by this time I wasn't listening. I don't know that I've ever listened to that album.
I don't think I have either, so I don't have have an opinion.
Love Jackson Browne.
Yeah. Very cool.
Okay. 87. Oh wow. 87 is Steel Wheels, Rolling Stones. It peaked at number 3. It was August of '89. I mean, mixed emotions.
I'm curious how well that's I need to go back and listen to that, because I remember when it came out thinking like, man, these guys still got it, you know?
Yeah.
Was it Exile? No. Was it Some Girls? No. But I remember just thinking, man, these guys still, and think about when was that released?
That was I think it was '89. Let's see. Yeah, '89. I thought they were so old. When that came out, I thought, these guys are dinosaurs. Why are they still releasing albums? And they're still touring.
They're still doing it, man.
35 years later.
And they're still putting out, the last like 2 or 3 records they put out rock. It's just, they're unstoppable. Yeah, that's awesome.
Unstoppable.
I'm going to go back and listen to that tomorrow for sure.
Yeah. It's funny because I was looking at, when I was going through these magazines the other night, and I found this one. I have another one that's a top 100 of something Rolling Stone, and Keith Richards is on the cover, and I think it's from 2002. So it's 23 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He looked so old in that picture, and I'm not being mean. Like that was 22 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the dude he is amazing. They should study him forever.
For sure. I remember somebody saying a joke, something like, only thing that will last through the Holocaust are cockroaches and Keith Richards.
I mean, he's been through it all, man. It's not like he was a sort of a partier. I mean, I saw a video or a documentary on the Stones when they were, I think it was for the Exile on Main Street album, and he was passed out in the corner, just like out. You know, they would have to revive him and bring him back up. Yeah. And that was 50 years ago, maybe longer.
That's crazy.
All right. Number 86 is The River, Bruce Springsteen, which we just talked about on a recent podcast.
Yep.
Great. One of the great double albums of all time.
Yep.
Wow. It actually charted at number 1. It peaked at number 1 October of 1980. Yeah. You know why though? Hungry Heart. That song was so huge. That
Yeah, but I can't say that that could not have been more huge than Free Falling.
right, I know, isn't that
There's just no
crazy?
way. I realize, I recognize its impact, but okay, that's cool.
Yeah. Okay, next one, and this came in right at the end. This came out a month before this magazine was released, so that's how good it was. We just talked about this last week. Number 85, Neil Young, Freedom. And at the time it hadn't
Y
peaked, so I don't know what its highest chart position. It had just been released when this magazine was issued, but they thought so much of it to go ahead and include it in their top
That's
100.
yeah, and
So,
given time, it would have probably knocked down another 10, 15 slots too. Yeah,
yeah,
great
I
album.
love that album. We talked about that on the last podcast.
Another one I gotta add to
Okay. Yeah, yeah. For that song "No More Alone" that I was talking about. Okay, 84, massive, massive hit. I feel like every song on this album was a hit, and it is from 1987, "Faith" by George Michael, peaked at
Yep.
number 1. You couldn't go anywhere, and every guy wanted to look like George Michael at
Oh,
the
for
time,
sure. Yeah.
he had the sort of faux beard thing going, the leather jacket, the hair was
Once
awesome.
again, just like Luther, another one of those sex symbols that was
Yeah,
not interested in his main demographic. Um,
yeah,
I have gone back. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Wham was never big for me, and
me
George
neither.
Michael never was until just recently, probably within the last couple of years. And we were on a road trip, and we're just listening. I said, you know what? I'm going to throw in, just a mix, a playlist of George Michael, and I'm like, I'm just like, damn,
Yeah.
this guy. It just wasn't my forte back in the day, but with a little bit of hindsight, I get it. I get why he was so impactful and so many people loved him so much, because what a hell of a songwriter, man.
Oh, and his voice was absolutely
Yep.
incredible.
Yep.
You know, he he captured something at the time because that was in the sort of the hair metal phase. You think back, he
Exactly.
was kind of dressing like that, with the leather and everything,
Right.
blue jeans, but he did it in a way that looked more like a model,
Yeah.
like a guy on the runway, a supermodel.
Right.
He just had the look, man. I mean, everybody wanted to be like George Michael. So
Yep.
yeah, good on him. It was a good record. 83, this is going to be unpopular take, but it's actually one of my favorite albums by this artist, even though people would go, "Oh, you're crazy." His stuff from the 70s, but David Bowie, "Let's Dance." I love this album. I just
Great
China
album.
Girl is one of my favorite. I think that song is just so great. Stevie Ray Vaughan played on this. It peaked at number 4
Yep.
from December of 1983. Niles Rodgers co-produced it with David Bowie, which is interesting.
Yep.
Great album. I love it.
I think you'd be surprised. I think if you look that up on AllMusic and if you talk to most fans, they're going to put that in their top 5, top 10 Bowie albums. I bet AllMusic probably has that at like 4.5, maybe even 5.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
it's
think
it's
you're yeah,
it's
I think you're
it's
right.
that good. So I don't think that's as much of a hot take as you think.
Yeah. Great album. Number 82, you love this band. You love this band more than I do, but I do love this band. But number 82 from May of 81 is East Side Story by Squeeze.
Yeah. Yeah. Great
And
album.
this was the Paul Carrick record, I believe.
Yep.
This was the one that he played on with Tempted.
Yep.
And do you know who the co-producers of this record were?
Um, wasn't anybody in Squeeze. It wasn't like Glenn or anybody,
Right.
right?
It was in
Um,
their circle, though. Think about the circle, the
Nick
pub
Lowe,
rock.
maybe?
No, close, really close. All right, it was May of 81. It peaked at number 44. Two of the three producers on this record, Elvis Costello and Dave Edmunds.
Oh, Edmonds. Okay. Yeah, mine was going to be Nick Lowe, and if it was Nick Lowe, I was going to follow that with interesting. Okay, I wonder
Yeah,
when he started to produce, because Nick Lowe was a huge, huge influence on Costello. Huge
yeah.
influence. Um, and I think maybe he probably learned some, and all apology. Me, I'm a Costello nerd, but all apologies, Mr. McManus, if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I'm sure he probably learned a lot production wise from Nick Lowe. So,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, because Nick Lowe was recording well before Elvis
yep,
Costello, right?
yep,
Um, yeah, I love early Nick Lowe.
I
I
do too.
mean, That guy, genius.
Yep.
Okay, last one we're gonna do for today. Number 81 is a little band called Van Halen. The album's called 1984.
Yep.
And guess what year that was released in?
1985? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
And Ted Templeman produced it. Do you know what it peaked at?
5.
No, 2.
Oh,
How did that album not? How was it not a number one?
that's
What's?
still
I
a
mean,
reason. The fact that you asked me was like, that's another one.
yeah,
I
you
was like,
knew
oh, it peaked at 38. There's no way.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that that didn't hit number one blows my mind. How
Yeah.
did that not hit number
That
one?
and
It's one
Full
of the most
Moon Fever
important
to
records.
me, I think we need to do some backup research.
You want a second opinion?
I do, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm shocked. I'm trying to think in 80. So if that came out in January of 84, the competition was probably, was Thriller still on the charts at that point? Yeah. I think Thriller
Yeah.
kept it out of number one.
Yeah,
I
you're right.
guarantee you.
That's the caveat. And so, and
Yeah.
then when was Full Moon Fever released? 87? Sorry, I
I
didn't
think it
mean
was 87.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'll have to go
something
back.
else in 87, that could have been Guns N' Roses, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe Appetite kept it out.
I have another book somewhere here, shocker, that has, the top albums. I'll have to look it up offline and come back with that. But yeah, I got to think that was the Thriller effect on Van Halen, because that album, that 1984 was one of the biggest albums of my life. And I'm not saying just me,
Sure.
I'm saying it was everywhere. Everyone, it didn't matter if you liked heavy metal or
Yeah,
pop, everyone listened to that record when it came out.
right.
It was just one of those albums,
For sure.
ubiquitous. Well, that was fun, Craig.
Yeah, I
Did
love
you
it.
like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta continue
Yeah,
that.
for sure. So next time we do this, we'll go 80 to 61. It's going to get really interesting. When we get towards the end, I know I flipped through it a little bit the other night. I didn't want to really give anything away, even to myself. But in the top 10, there's one or two surprises there where you're going to go, what? Where, and I'm not saying they're bad albums, but to say that, okay, we're wrapping up the 80s and we're going to say this is a top 10 record, you're going to be surprised at one of them. I can't wait to
Is
get
it
your.
Pram?
It's not Pram. It's not Pram. They just missed out on this list. Oh, they're a 90s band, Craig. That's why.
Oh, that's
They,
right. Who knows?
I need to.
They could have been an earlier psychedelic garage funk metal band back from the
Yeah,
80s. I don't know.
it's got to be. That would be awesome if we go through a Rolling Stone list and we find Pram. I'm going to bet we won't, but
Right.
it would be pretty
Poor
amazing. Yeah, poor Pram. Well, what we'll do today, since we rolled through this, we won't do an uncut for today. How about that?
That's cool.
We've probably given the listeners a lot to think about here. A lot of these albums, I mean, you and I both, just going through this list, make me want to go back and re-listen to them. I haven't listened to East Side Story in a long time. Have you?
Oh,
I mean, you're a bigger Squeeze fan than I am.
That's not my go-to album, but I mean, it's up there for sure. It's a great
What-
album. I think Squeeze
What's
to
your
me in
favorite?
general is just, I mean, their first 3 records to me, RG Bargy is just brilliant. Cool for Cats, very, very
Yeah.
underrated. Love that album. I just, man, and I've seen them. It wasn't recently, but it was in the last 5-6 years, something like that, at Tabernacle, and they were great.
Yeah.
They sounded great, man.
Did they have what were their names? Dilford and Tilbrook, or what were those two?
Tilbrook, definitely. I don't know about.
Okay.
I don't know if Dilford is still with them.
Okay.
I'm not sure who's still in the band right now, but definitely
Yeah.
Glenn's definitely in there.
That was their album where they became really popular, though, because before that they were kind of a new wave act that
Yeah.
was sort of on the fringe, and then with Tempted, it just took them to a different level. That song was just, I love that song too. I know it's not for a Squeeze purist maybe, but what a great song that is.
Still
Paul
great.
Carrick.
That's one to me, like we've talked about with other songs where it got played a lot. It's still on classic rock. You'll hear it, 2 or 3 times a day. But if I heard it once a week, fine by me. It's that good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul Carrick is one of those guys. A lot of people, they know the voice, they know the songs, but may not realize it's him singing. But he had a hit with Squeeze. He had a huge hit before that with Ace. How Long is probably one of my
That is
top 20 favorite songs ever.
Yep.
And then he also had some hits with Mike and the Mechanics as the lead singer. A lot of
Man,
people
he
forget about
did
that.
talk about a run. Well, that's
Yeah.
impressive. I didn't.
Yeah, the living years.
I've completely forgot about Mike and the Mechanics too. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he basically charted with 4 di he had Solo, Paul Carrack, he
Hmm.
had Mike and the Mechanics, he had Ace, and
And
Squeeze.
Squeeze.
But but when you could sing that good, I mean, people just want you, "Hey, come come sing on one of our songs," you know?
Right.
We need a hit. Paul Carrack, he's our guy.
Yeah.
Do you remember the other main lead singer for Mike and the Mechanics?
Hmm.
It's fresh in my mind because I just finished reading Mike Rutherford's
I
book, and he
I
talks a
don't
lot about
I don't think so.
Paul Young.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You
I
remember
should
him
de
though, right?
oh, for sure. I should definitely have
Yeah.
known that, but yeah. That's a
I
band I've kind of forgotten about, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Loved them
It's
back in the
really
radio days, but
Yeah, All I Need Is a Miracle. I think Silent Running was one of the best songs of that time period. It
yep.
wasn't hard rock, but it had an edge to it as a little proggy,
Yep.
the kinda leaning on the Genesis day. It sounded kinda like a Genesis song, just wasn't Phil Collins singing it,
Right.
but I love that. I listened to them this weekend some, and Paul Young is another guy. His voice was just incredible. That song, it's called, Stay, Won't You Come Back,
Mhm. I know
Stay
what
for
you mean.
Good This Time,
Yeah,
I think is the name of it. Oh my
great song.
gosh, that's like an
There's
early '80s.
To me, there's certain singers out there like Paul Young, that r like Paul Rogers of
Yeah,
Bad Company is another one of those guys to where it's like it's effortless. I talked about Luther Vandross to where you watch him sing it, it's like his mouth isn't even moving, but holy
yeah,
mackerel, the sounds. And to me, Paul Rogers was another one of those guys. I was never a huge fan of Bad Company, but I was always a fan of him. I always wanted
yeah,
the backing band to rock a little bit harder. And I've never checked out his stuff with Queen when he took over for Queen for a while. I don't know if
yeah,
that's good or not, but I see, and he's nothing, absolutely nothing like what you'd expect to replace somebody of that magnitude, of that level of.
right,
But I
yeah,
can see why they went with him because they were both effortless vocalists. They were just
yeah,
both obviously had to be somewhat classically trained to be able
yeah,
to yeah. And I feel like Carrick is definitely one of those guys where it sounds doesn't sound like he's straining at all to hit whatever level, whether it's high or low. And
yeah.
I'm in awe of that because somebody that does sing and doesn't do very well these
Uh,
days. I mean,
uh,
it's tough.
I think you have an incredible voice. Well, it's funny, Paul Rogers, I mean, think about it, he started with Free.
Yeah,
That band rocked. I mean,
they rock.
that was the right band for him and his voice. Then he goes to Bad Company, then he goes to The Firm
That
and has a
yeah,
couple
that's another
Radioactive,
one. He's another
and then he
comparison.
yeah,
Sorry,
and then he was started a band called The Law. I don't know if you remember that. They did one
one
album,
album.
and it was the song was called "Laying Down the Law," and I used to make a joke that, you can't have I just in general, name of the band, name of the song, name of the album is all called "The Law," it's like, come on,
That's
stretch it a
like,
little bit.
what was the name of the movie with Jeremy Piven, where I can't remember the name of the movie, but, he was literally in his 7th year of college, and he was talking to this guy, Gutter, and Gutter was the guy he's a famous producer now, he was on Friends for a while, I'm totally drawing a blank. He was in, I think Swingers. You would definitely know him. I'm totally
I
drawing a
think
blank.
I could see his face,
I'm
yeah.
drawing a blank on his name, but the guy's Gutter, and he went to see this band. I actually really like this band too, called of course I'm drawing a blank on that too. But anyway, he's wearing the band T-shirt to go to their concert, and he goes, "You're wearing the shirt of the band you're going to see." He goes, "Gutter,
Yeah,
don't be that guy."
yeah. You can't
Paul,
do that.
Paul, don't be the guy that writes a song named
Right.
after the name of the band.
Yeah, and then call your album the same thing. It's just too
Yeah.
much.
I
Yeah,
think I
but
totally overlooked that album, or maybe I didn't. I don't know, but
yeah, I know, but I do love the first Firm album. What's
yeah.
funny, I'll just say this as a wrap up, the 3 guys we just talked about that were singers for hire, Carrick, Young, and Rogers, all named Paul.
What is it with
Isn't that
Paul?
funny?
Yeah,
Yeah, what is it with those guys? They could sing, man.
yeah,
Yeah,
Paul McCartney,
I love it. All right, another great episode. We'll pick
100%.
this back up.
Yeah,
Especially give us some feedback, people, and let us know what you think. And we'll continue to do stuff like this just to be, you know what? There's no one else doing a podcast that's doing this. I'm pretty sure.
yeah. We're not sticking with the same list other than
Yeah.
uncut, and even that
Yeah.
we're diversifying. We're going kind of off the cuff there. But I like the fact that you have so much. He has so many resources. He's not lying. Like he's going to pull
Yeah.
out another resource that I don't know he has. And every time it's
Um,
interesting because, like you said, to have a list of the 80s now compared to a list of the 80s as the 80s is coming to a close is completely different. So
oh,
it's a great perspective.
here's the original. This is the original 500 greatest albums of all time.
Yep.
This list is different now. If you go look at the 500 right now, it's completely different.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this. Maybe we won't go 500 down, but maybe we'll do the top 20 albums of all time. This
And
was released originally in, I want to say 2001 or 2002. Fascinating.
I think if
And
we did, let's do top 20, and I think let's do a cross comparison of before and after.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
rapid, because at top
yep,
20, it bears not repeating, right? It's been if it's in the
right.
top 20, it's been talked about a billion times. So we'll go real rough
Yeah.
shot, but I would love to compare 20 to 1 before and after. That's got to
I
be
tell you
fascinating.
what, let's make this fun. I have the magazine of the original 500 list.
Yep.
Doesn't have to be next week. You download the top 20 as it is right now,
Yeah.
and I'll say the 20 that it was then, and you say what it is now.
Oh,
Let's
that's
just go down the list.
perfect. God,
Let's do that'd be fun.
now I want to keep recording. That's all right.
Yeah, I know. All right. Well, awesome episode. Thank you, Craig. Thanks for doing this as a late nighter, and thanks everyone. See you soon.